Te quedas en blanco cuando intentas hablar español. Let's talk about why this happens and 3 things you can do about it. And stay to the end because number 3 is the most important. They are all things that'll help you go from Spanish learner to Spanish speaker. By the way, I put together a free guide where I share all kinds of practical tips for making speaking less intimidating and overall more fun so that you can make more progress. You can download that for free at the link in the description below. What's been surprising to me in my 15 plus years of learning and speaking Spanish is that freezing when it's time to speak isn't necessarily related to your level. It has a lot to do with personality and an absence of fear when speaking. So what can we do to remove that pánico escénico, that stage fright, and develop more speaking confidence so that we actually want to speak more Spanish so that we can get better? Well, this is some of what has helped me and my students. First, if you worry a lot about making mistakes in your conversations, try starting your next chat with a little disclaimer. No llevo mucho tiempo hablando español. O vas a tener que ayudarme un poco. O hace tiempo que no hablo español, lo tengo medio olvidado. No, it's not about putting yourself down or discrediting yourself. It's a lot more for you than it is for the other person. Because in my experience, letting somebody know that I'm still learning at the start of a conversation has helped me feel more relaxed and less pressured to say everything correctly. That helps the conversation flow, which makes everything feel more pleasant for you, which makes the next conversation easier to start, kind of a virtuous cycle. The second tip is a little bit counterintuitive. In our native language, we often think faster than we can speak. But in a new language, it's usually the opposite. Our mouth wants to keep talking, but we get stuck because our brain hasn't been able to form the next thought. And, this happens even more if we tend to speak quickly when we get nervous, which of course is a lot more common in another language. We get more nervous when we're speaking a second language. When we try to speak quickly, but we are not ready to do that, it makes our speech a lot more choppy, a lot more starts and stops, overall less fluid. So what I recommend is to try to speak more slowly. It gives you more time to think about what you want to say and clarify your ideas. So if you speak more slowly, pronounce your words more carefully, you'll see that it flows better, and very likely it's not going to sound as slow as it feels. To explain the third tip, I need to tell you a quick story of how I started to speak Spanish and why you should do basically the opposite. I had been learning Spanish for a couple of years in school, and I had never actually spoken it. Like probably a lot of you, I knew lots of words and grammar, but I thought that you had to be immersed in Spanish in a Spanish-speaking country in order to be able to speak it. I dreamed of moving abroad, which eventually I did do, but that didn't need to be the thing that changed my speaking skills. Essentially, I outsourced my speaking progress to external circumstances instead of taking action on it myself. And the longer I waited, the more pressure I felt. And when I finally did have my first conversation, it actually went a lot better than I expected. And the great thing was a lot of the pressure that I felt disappeared, which overall was positive. But looking back today, I see how many opportunities I missed leading up to that. Moments when I was trying to formulate the perfect sentence and then ended up just not speaking at all. So that's what you should not do. What I wish I had done and what I recommend you do is this. Think of speaking as similar to playing tennis. Playing matches and practicing against opponents is important and useful, of course, but good tennis players also practice on their own, hitting the ball against the wall or hitting back against the machine. So in a similar way, with your Spanish, don't just speak only when you travel or only in your weekly tutoring session or with your conversation partner. Talk to yourself every day for just a few minutes about topics that you are interested in. There are some really practical and fun ways to do this that I will share in a future video, but this lets you practice in a controlled environment. It lets you repeat things until you get them right, and it lets you speak without that feeling of awkwardness where someone is waiting for you to find your words. If you spend a month speaking for just a few minutes a day, you will feel a huge sense of progress in your fluidity and the ease with which you can access the words and phrases that are kind of buried in your brain. It's kind of like getting more flexible. You can do it, but only by pushing yourself a tiny bit further each day. If you want to take action on this video and use the tips to speak better Spanish, download the free guide in the description below. And if you want more tips for building your speaking skills, check out this video next.